guys, how are you? All right, so last week we were talking about the nervous system and like our sensors and how each of our senses picks up a message. It sends that message to the brain, and then our brain goes, this is what you're seeing, or this is what you're feeling, this is what you're smelling, this is what you're tasting. You need to do this. And then we're like, oh, okay, great. Thank you, brain. But let's talk about our brain a little bit more. So I thought this week would be a good week just to talk about our brain. All right, so our brain. Our brain is an organ inside the skull that acts as the body's control center. So our brain, here we have one of the things you'll find in your stuff to do this week is this little brain info poster. I have already colored mine in, as you can see. So you can color yours in, but let's look at this together. So the brain right here is an organ that sits inside your skull. So you feel how your forehead and stuff, how your head is really hard. That's because you have this big bone that's called the skull, and it protects our brain. Our brain is behind our skull, so it's on the inside. And it's connected to our spinal cord. We talked about that a little bit last week. Our spinal cord runs all the way down. The brain is like our control center, or the boss of the nervous system. So just like at home, your parents are the boss of the house, and at school, Miss Winston is the boss of the classroom. Your brain is the boss of your body. And it's the boss of the nervous system. It is able to receive and store information. So that means it gets information and then it keeps it, and it keeps it for us. And then the brain receives messages from inside and outside the body. So it listens to what's going on inside of our body, and then it uses all of our senses and our sensory nerves, like we talked about last week, to get information from the outside of our body. And the brain has three main parts. It has the cerebrum, which is this main part right here with the red, blue, green, and orange. It's all part of the cerebrum. It also has the cerebellum, which is this little brown part right here. And it has the brainstem, which is this tan part. Each part has a special job that it performs. In addition to sitting inside of the skull, the brain is wrapped in 3 layers of tissue. Pretty cool, huh? It's wrapped in 3 layers of tissue. And it floats in a special protective fluid. So it's like floating in the pool, like when you go swimming and you just lay on your back and you float. Our brain is floating in some special fluid, and it acts like a cushion for our brain so that our brain doesn't just like knock over, hit our skull all the time. It's like, oh, I'm just floating, I'm fine. The brain is very small for all that it does. It weighs about 3 pounds, and the surface has many folds and grooves that store all our information. Every single part of our brain does something, and our brain then uses our brainstem to connect to our spinal cord. So I think that's pretty cool. All right, so let's go over each part of our brain. So on your eCampus, you saw I put this little poster up so that you can look back at this if you need help with your answers. But you have a label. So we're going to label the parts of our brain, but we're going to use this as a reference so that we know what to write and what to color. Now you guys are going to color each of these a different color. So let's look first. Let's look up here. It has a word bank for us to look at to see what goes where. So the first word in our word bank is brainstem. So I'm going to look back at my picture and I'm going to find the brainstem. Where is the brainstem? Right, it's right here. So I'm going to look for this little thing on my label. And we found it. Here is the brainstem right here. So I'm going to write brainstem. And I'm going to cross it off of my word bank. Now, my brainstem is a special color. So I am going to find my colored pencils. And I'm going to color it to match the picture. So in our poster, it's like a tan color. So I'm going to look for a tan color. And I'm just going to very quickly color it. I want you to take your time and do it very beautifully because you guys are so good at coloring. But since I am in a video, I am just going to go super quick. So we've found our brainstem. Okay, so we crossed that one off. Now what is next? The parietal lobe. Now I know that these are really weird and long names, and they're hard to say. They're hard for me to say. And I'm not thinking that we need to remember the names of the parts of the brain. If you remember anything, it's that the brain is the boss. They're in charge, okay? But I think it's important that we learn and hear this information so that if it ever comes up again, you can say, oh man, I've heard this before. I might not remember everything, but I've definitely heard this before, and it won't be brand new. So let's look for the parietal lobe. I see it here. It's this part of our brain. And what color did they make the parietal lobe? They colored it blue. Now, if you look at a real brain, our brain is not a bunch of different colors. It's just one like grayish pink color. But they made it all different colors so that we can see the different parts of the brain easier. So we're going to color the parietal lobe blue. And after we go through and find out where all these parts are, we're going to talk a little bit about what each part does. Okay, so that it's not just, oh yeah, the parietal lobe. What the heck does that do? I don't know. We can find out a little bit about what it does, and then maybe it'll be easier for us to remember. So I colored the parietal lobe, and then I wrote it on my lines, and I crossed it off in my word bank. Okay? So let's look next. The next word in my word bank is occipital lobe. That's another really hard word. Can you say that with me? Occipital. Occipital. Occipital lobe. Oh my gosh. That is a mouthful even for me. So I'm going to look on my beautiful picture and I'm going to try to find occipital lobe. I see it over here. What color did they make the occipital lobe? They made it green. Yes, green. So I'm going to find this part on my brain and color it green. So let's look here. Here is where the occipital lobe is. So I'm going to write occipital lobe. I'm going to cross it off, and I'm going to color this part green, okay? So I wrote it, I crossed it off, and now I need to color it green. So let's get my green out. Again, Miss Winston is coloring very quickly, but I want you to take your time, okay? So I've colored it green. All right, let's see what's next. This is the frontal lobe, frontal lobe. All right, let's find the frontal lobe on our picture. I see it right here. And what color did they make the frontal lobe? Red. Good job. So I'm going to find the frontal lobe on my paper. Frontal lobe. Right here, I'm going to color it red, and I'm going to write frontal lobe here and cross it off here. Okay? It's 3 steps. I know you guys can do it. Frontal lobe. Cross it off, and then I'm going to take my red and I'm going to color that part of the brain. And you guys are going to take your time and make it beautiful. All right, so I found the frontal lobe. I colored it red. I wrote frontal lobe, and I crossed it off in our word bank. All right, we have 2 more, and then we are done with this paper. All right, so the next part is the cerebellum. Where is the cerebellum? Let's look here. Where is the cerebellum? It's down here. It's this brown piece. Yeah, they colored it brown. So I am going to find this part on my paper, and I'm going to color it brown. So I'm going to write cerebellum. I'm crossing the word cerebellum off of my word bank. I'm going to find my brown colored pencil, and I'm going to color the cerebellum brown. All right, so I've colored it brown. I wrote cerebellum, and I crossed it off on my worksheet. All right, we have 1 more, and it's this piece right here. And that is the temporal lobe, the temporal lobe. All right, so we're going to see what color they made the temporal lobe. Looking back at my picture, the temporal lobe is yellow, yellow. So I'm going to get my yellow pencil, and I'm going to color that part yellow. I'm going to write temporal lobe, and I'm crossing it out. All right, so I wrote temporal lobe, I crossed it out, and I colored it yellow. So now my paper is done. I've filled in all the blanks, and I've colored all the pieces. Awesome. Man, you guys are rock stars at all of this. I gotta tell you, you're doing so good. All right. So we talked about where all these different parts of the brain are, but what do they do? Why are they important? Why do we need those parts of the brain? So you'll also find this fun poster that you get to color, and it breaks down all the parts of our brain and kind of shows us a little bit about what it does. What Miss Winston did is she went ahead and she wrote some key words to help us remember what these parts of the brain do. So let's start with number 1. Number 1, the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe has a person's head with a little light bulb, like, bing, I have an idea. Our frontal lobe are our ideas, our thoughts, and our memory. So when we go, oh man, remember when Miss Winston had a dance party at school and it was so much fun? You're using your frontal lobe. So our frontal lobe have our ideas and our thoughts and our memory. Number 2, we're going to go over here to the blue. Number 2. Now these are all pictures of taste and hearing and sight and hands and smell. So these are all of our senses. So the parietal lobe takes in all the information from our sensory nerves. So they help us take in messages and for our senses, and our sensory nerves. All right, number 3, the occipital lobe. The occipital lobe. So the parietal lobe might get some things from our sight and senses, but our occipital lobe is really all about vision. So this is where when we look at something and our brain gets a picture and it's upside down, and then our brain goes, hey, this is the way the picture goes, and flips it right side up. And our occipital lobe is where all of that happens. All right, number 4. We're going to skip this one for right now. We're going to go to number 4, which is the yellow, the temporal lobe. The temporal lobe is where our hearing happens. So when we hear something and the sound goes into our ear and it hits our eardrum, remember? And when drums make noise, it's because it's vibrating. And so our eardrum vibrates and hits the bones and it goes into our temporal lobe, and our temporal lobe lets us know what we're hearing, or if it's too loud, or if it's too soft and I can't hear you. So that's where that happens. And these two didn't have a number, but they are a part of our brain. So we have the cerebellum, and that's the little brown part right here. Our cerebellum is the part of our brain that we use when we want to tell our body to move. So when I'm like, I want to raise my hand because I have something to say, then my cerebellum would be like, okay, Miss Winston's right arm, lift. And now my hand is in the air, but that's because of my cerebellum. And then the last part here is our brainstem. So our brainstem is the part of our body that is connected to the spinal cord. So it connects our brain to our spinal cord. And this is where all of the messages from our body get sent. And then the brainstem decides where in our brain those messages need to go. It also is in charge of doing all the things that our body needs to do that we don't even think about, like our heartbeat. We don't tell our heart to beat. We don't need to, because our brainstem does it for us. So it's in charge of getting messages and sending them where they need to go, and then taking the messages back from one of these parts and sending it back down the spinal cord. It's also in charge of basic body functions. So it lets our body know what it needs to do so that we don't have to think about it. Oh my, you guys are doing awesome. We have one more activity that we need to get finished, and then you are all done with science. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. All right. So we are going to do a game called A Healthy Nervous System. So we're going to figure out if the pieces here, if they're part of a healthy brain or if they're part of an unhealthy brain. Okay, so you're going to need to cut all this out. Parents, the paper comes with 2 sections. They're both the same, so you just need the half sheet of this. So I've already gone ahead and I've cut out my pieces. So let's read the first one. This says, playing a game of chess with your dad. Does that help you make a healthy brain or an unhealthy brain? Let's think. That helps you make a healthy brain. So you're going to put it on the healthy brain side. All right. Let's see. My next one is playing ice hockey without a helmet. I don't know if any of you know what ice hockey is, but it is a sport where you are skating on the ice and sometimes you get really knocked and hit and all this stuff. It's slammed. And so your head might be like boom and hit a lot of things and get hurt. So if you did not have a helmet on, would you be helping you have a healthy brain or an unhealthy brain? Unhealthy brain, that's right. I'm just gonna do, I think, one more on each side with you, and then you guys can finish this up yourself because I know you guys are super good at this. All right. Let me see here. All right, I have my next one. Playing outside with your friends. So if you are playing outside with your friends, are you making a healthy brain or an unhealthy brain? Excuse me. A healthy brain. If you play outside with your friends, you are helping to make a healthy brain. All right. The next one, eating lots of sweets and drinking sugary drinks. All right. Does that help us make a healthy brain or an unhealthy brain? All right, my paper. That is part of an unhealthy brain. If we ate too many sweet and sugary things, then our brain is not going to be happy and it's going to start feeling very unhealthy. All right. All right, we have done 2 healthy brains and 2 unhealthy brains. And now you can go through and read the rest and see which one you think it belongs in. I have had so much fun learning about the brain with you, and I hope you have a wonderful time. And I will talk to you guys later. Make sure you're listening and working, okay? Bye.